Anthropology and feminism. Anthropology concepts and methods have been and continue to be used in feminist studies and theories today. Feminists work to understand and improve the position of women in society. Feminist anthropology was developed to better understand women and culture. It incorporates the four subfields of anthropology, which are archaeological, biological, cultural, and linguistic studies. Anthropology is applied in the field of feminism by studying the cultural view of women in different societies, both in past and present cultures. Around the year 1850, it was noticed that there was a male dominance in cultural and population studies. Ethnographic and anthropologic studies were done by men for men and created the need for women's studies and the incorporation of women in research. Archaeological feminist studies help us understand the past, helps us understand the gender roles and the social classification of women in the past societies of the world. Cultural feminist studies help us understand the role of women in kinship, family, and marriage. We can see the behavior and bias towards gender in different cultures, and also can compare and contrast the difference between matrilineal societies and patrilineal societies. Biological feminist studies help us understand the biology of gender. We can understand how genders work together and how male and female differs. Linguistic feminist studies help us understand how genders communicate between each other, also how genders intercommunicate. To find the true understanding of humanity, both men and women must be equivalently studied. It is imperative to contrast different views and roles of women in different societies. Ruth Benedict. Ruth Benedict was an early and influential female anthropologist. She studied under the famed anthropologist Franz Boas at Columbia University and received her PhD in 1923. She developed configurational approach to culture, which stated that different societies favored different personality types. She studied advanced and primitive societies, and she was one of the first women to join an all-male research team. Ruth Benedict focused on sexuality. She wrote about sexual variations and deviances within cultures. She spoke out against racism, religious bigotry, and the prejudice against women. She emphasized the importance of tolerance in ending the persecution of individuals for their deviances. She was a female scholar and a bisexual, which was considered a deviance at that time, and neither of those were accepted. She stated that the feminist movement needed heroines, and that's exactly what she was. Ruth Benedict was a feminist pioneer and began paving the way for advancements in women's research. Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead was one of the most famous anthropologists in the world. She too studied under Franz Boas at Columbia University, where she received her PhD in 1929. She worked with Ruth Benedict and branched some of her work off of Ruth's work. She is one of the leading women in the feminist anthropology movement. Margaret Mead published Male and Female in 1949 and Growth and Culture in 1951. What she had published argued that personality and characteristics of male and female do not differ naturally. They are shaped by the cultural conditioning and not heredity. Margaret Mead theorized that socialization creates the gender specific traits and traditions, which creates gender stereotypes. The title woman was not just a biological determination, but a cultural and societal one as well. Margaret Mead started a movement called Boasians to question this classification. Mead's fieldwork with diverse cultures led to studying the cultural effect on social development and gender stratification. She also studied women's sexuality. Her studies sparked America's sexual revolution and the second wave of feminism. And her books, Coming of Age in Samoa and Sex and Temperament, she discussed a more relaxed approach to premarital sex and exploration, all while pushing for incorporation of women in anthropological studies and leading the way in feminist anthropology.